today I am going to be doing part 1 of a 3-part mini-series, and I am going to be continuing on our rainbow theme for Pride Month, and this is part 1 where I will be making a rainbow Dreamcatcher. So let's get started. So to begin my 3-part rainbow Dreamcatcher extravaganza, and even for this episode, I'm just going to start by weaving the actual body of the Dreamcatcher. Now I do this by taking some white embroidery thread and wrapping it around the embroidery hoop, and then slowly just working my way towards the center, looping the thread through the threads above it. And I work my way round and do this until I reach the center and add a bead. Now that will have taken a couple of hours, so it's now getting late and I have gone to get myself tea and light some candles before sitting myself down preparing for the next part of this Dreamcatcher, which will be making the tails. Now I'm making my tails out of yarn and ribbon. And you can see here I've got my wee yarn box out on the table, and actually it doesn't quite fit on the table, so I've put it down on the floor, and I am going through and choosing the yarns that I think will be most suited to this Dreamcatcher. Picking a selection of whites and pinks, again like the white and pink beads that I've got going on in the body of the Dreamcatcher, and I am working my way through picking which ones will go well as the tails. Now the tails are the dingle dangles that come down underneath the Dreamcatchers that I create. So what I've done is I've taken a couple of different thicknesses of yarn, different qualities, or different, like yarn comes in different thicknesses depending on how thick or thin piece of clothing or whatever it is you're planning on making. So having this nice selection of different heavinesses of yarn, I feel, gives the tails some structure. So when I've chosen all the yarns I like, I then work out how long I want the tails to be in comparison to the Dreamcatcher. And I do this pretty much by eye, and then I double that length and add about an inch for where the knot will be. On this particular Dreamcatcher, I will be tying on, I think, 14 white tails. So for each of the yarns I've chosen, I will cut either 14 or 24 lengths, depending on how many I want in each knot. So after I've measured up the yarn and cut it, I will then separate it into 14 groups. Now, each group will have a selection of the different types, and that way when they're knotted up together, it's a nice variety flowing through the tails. And I'm also going to be adding ribbons as well to make this a really bright, colourful Dreamcatcher as opposed to the plain white with a couple of pink highlights that you're seeing in front of you now. Now this can take a wee while to do. I usually have Netflix or something on in the background. So once I've cut all my yarn, I make sure I put the rest of my wool away, and I just have my yarn, my ribbons, a pair of scissors, and my Dreamcatcher. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out 2 of each ribbon, or 2 lengths of ribbon that are the same as the length of yarn. The length the yarn will fall when it falls loose away from the Dreamcatcher, so you don't need to stretch it or anything because the ribbons won't stretch. So I cut 2 of each colour, all at this length, and I have everything laid out nicely. Now this is the sorry, I've lost my notes. And so I found it easiest to, once I had my ribbons cut and my pieces of yarn cut, I then cut everything into groups so I could see how it was all going to look laid out under the Dreamcatcher. And then finally I will go on to actually tie all of these on. So I usually start in the middle at the bottom, because then I can work my way out over both sides. Now, as you work your way out and up, you kind of want the same thing to be happening on the left as is on the right. So I start in the middle, and in the very center I actually want to have the red, that really strong red. It's a personal preference for me. I know some people like their rainbows to start on the purple, some people like their rainbows to start on the red. I like double rainbows because of the symmetry, and I much prefer purple as a color to red, because purple is my favorite color and red is not. So I have purple on the outside, and then there's twice as much of it as there is of the red. But then I do my red ribbon, then my whites, then orange, then the whites, and the yellows, and the whites, etc. as I work my way up and round. So what I've done here is I have gone to town on my ribbons. Now I started off by just doing the white selections. I had a look at doing knotting all the ribbon and the wool together, but it didn't quite come out as how I wanted it, sitting right. So what I did was I put the white ribbons starting in the center, at the middle, at the bottom of the Dreamcatcher, my white selections of wool bundles, and what I do is I just poke the center of the bundle through the holes closest to the wood rim of the Dreamcatcher, and I pull that loop through the back and round to underneath the Dreamcatcher, and then I just put all the tails there round through that hole and then pull it tight, and this way the knots are secure and they're not going, and none of the ribbons are going to fall out or fall off the Dreamcatcher, whilst it's still being quite a natural look. There's not any awkward knots to show, it's just quite neat and nice. So I start in the middle at the bottom of the Dreamcatcher, and I slowly work my way out. Now, as I said, this is part of a 3-part mini-series, so this is quite a small little Dreamcatcher, but also working in the threads in the middle all the way into the middle takes longer than I thought, or I remember. Every time I do this I forget that when I'm going the whole way into the center of a Dreamcatcher it takes about 4 times as long instead of twice as long. But this is actually only about a third of the full final project I'm planning. So we shall see where this goes on, but there will definitely be more colour involved in what else is happening with it, because it is just quite light at the moment. It's not incorporating the rainbow theme as much as I would like if it was a full rainbow Dreamcatcher, but this is just the beginning of it, so there will be more to come here, as this is quite a basic Dreamcatcher at the moment and I want something a bit more. So that was my Dreamcatcher for today's videos. Remember, if you like my art, you can always check me out on social media. Rock on, my lovelies, and remember, stay safe! I'm not entirely sure why, I quite like to have stuff burning while I'm working.
Wow. Wow. Dad Baby Productions.
Talk. Anyway, if you like my art, check me out on my social media. Rock on, my lovelies, and remember, stay safe. If you've enjoyed watching this video today, make sure to check out my art on social media, as that's where I am showcasing photos of all the different things that I am making. And rock on. I hate outros. Okay, last time. So that was my Dreamcatcher for today's videos. Remember, if you like my art, you can always check me out on social media. Rock on, my lovelies, and remember, stay safe!